Welcome back. We're now joined by the British High Commissioner, Mr. Charles Moore, to talk to us about the announcement yesterday concerning stringent new requirements for Namibians entering into the UK. Mr. Moore, good evening and thank you so much for your time.
Evening, yeah.
Now, the introduction of these new regulations, although not entirely unexpected, are being implemented rather swiftly. Why is that?
Well, that's normally the way we do things with visa changes. It actually saves confusion. If you start saying that they're going to be introduced in 3 weeks' time or 4 weeks' time, it's actually quite difficult to do. If we introduce them with immediate effect, then people are in no doubt. And it also saves a rush for people trying to book tickets to try and beat the deadline, especially in this sort of circumstance where the imposition of this is to try to prevent, is for border security reasons, to try to prevent the increasing number of asylum seekers we've had from Namibia. So we don't necessarily want to allow a grace period where people can book tickets and try to come in under the radar, if you like, although there is this grace period. And it's a good opportunity now, I suppose, to apologise to the many hundreds of Namibian travellers who go regularly to the UK and abide by the immigration rules. You know, there are many hundreds of Namibians who do that, and this is really trying to prevent an issue of those who go to the UK for the purpose of seeking asylum.
How does this new visa requirement affect, seeking asylum in the UK going forward?
Well, there's no change to how people seek asylum. Once they arrive in the UK, if they arrive by legal means, they can claim asylum, and their claim will then be assessed with due process. The difference is that normally countries who don't need a visa to visit the UK, they can travel there, and the problem is that when we've had increasing number of Namibians who have turned up at the border not having required a visa, so they've turned up legally but then claiming asylum, and the visa process then allows us to pre-screen people more precisely, and therefore those who are going with the intention of claiming asylum would not necessarily be granted a visa. Will these
new regulations cause any strain between the relationship, of the United Kingdom and Namibia, given that you've experienced quite healthy bilateral relations thus far? There was, of course, news that came forth today that the Namibian government has decided to sort of organize a special committee to look into this matter. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think no is the answer. I mean, we do have very healthy relations, and I think the establishment of a committee is something that actually shows how much this means to Namibia, and we don't underestimate the impact. But this is sort of routine international business. We're not doing something that is out of the ordinary or taking us out of step with international partners. Namibians need visas for 127 countries, and so we're not alone. In fact, Namibian nationals need visas for the EU, for the US, for Canada, for Japan, Russia, for China, for Venezuela. So a lot of international partners of Namibia are countries where Namibian nationals require visas for entry, and I suppose in a way then we're closing that gap, because we're one of the only countries, developed countries, where Namibians didn't need a visa. And that's nothing to do with the political relationship. The political relationship is very strong. What it's about is protection of borders, which is precisely what we would anticipate Namibia doing as well, because every sovereign country has the right to protect their borders and to determine who comes in and who doesn't.
The announcement, of course, was only made yesterday by the British High Commission, but what has the reception from the public been like?
Well, mixed really. I mean, we've been monitoring it very closely, and we've been getting lots of phone calls. There's been heavy activity on social media. And it's mixed reactions. I think because, as you said earlier, it's not entirely unexpected. We've been aware, and we've been discussing with the Namibian government on many occasions the increase in asylum seekers arriving in the UK. And so quite a lot of the social media comments, some has been about, well, it's about time because we need to stop this. Others are more upset, understandably so, because you know, when you travel internationally, it's already quite a stressful and expensive process, and then we're now effectively adding one more layer of cost and one more layer of inconvenience. And so we can understand why travellers are upset about the additional bureaucracy around it. But actually I think it's a very helpful thing. You know, the Namibian nationals who turn up seeking asylum are often people who have taken out huge loans to get there. They've sold their cattle or they've taken out massive loans from the banks in order to reach the UK. We think generally to try to get a job. And these are people who can't afford it, and invariably their applications are declined and they have to come back. And so actually, you know, and when they turn up claiming asylum, they have to give a reason, and we don't know the particular reasons that people give, but asylum is there to provide sanctuary for people fleeing persecution, war, death, imprisonment, you know, all of those issues, none of which are applicable to Namibia. And so what happens eventually is that the number of asylum seekers we've had from Namibia are clogging up our system. They're costing money for us to maintain while we look at their application, which takes well over a year at the moment because we have a massive backlog. And it's unreasonable, and in the end they're ultimately returned.
If we're speaking figures, because clearly this is a concerning matter to the you know, the British. So what are we looking at in terms of numbers when it comes to the amount of Namibians that have been seeking asylum?
In terms of numbers, back in 2016 we had 27 asylum claims. Last year it was 651, and in the first three months of this year we already had 382. So that was on target to be more than double last year's total. And Namibia was the country with the highest number of asylum seekers in the world arriving from countries that didn't previously need a visa. The same was true of Honduras, where we've also applied a visa regime as well. Last year it was El Salvador, which was had high figures. And the evidence suggests that obviously the introduction of a visa regime pretty much immediately prevents and seriously reduces the number of people who travel for the purpose of seeking asylum. So those figures are quite high. I mean, we have more than 1,200 applications in the UK already waiting for determination, and anecdotally more than 90% of those are likely to be declined because there are no grounds generally for seeking asylum from Namibia. So we recognise what the burden is, and the figure 651 last year, heading for well over 1,000 this year, is completely unsustainable. So we have to try to prevent it. And we've mentioned this to the Namibian government, and you know we've discussed ways in which we might be able to work together. But there's very few solutions. You can't stop people getting on a plane. You can't stop them travelling and claiming asylum. So the visa process is our way of actually putting one more layer in front of them so that it makes it harder for those people who are travelling solely to claim asylum to get on the plane.
Are there Namibians that are possibly facing deportation due to this, and should they be deported, will they be allowed entry back into the UK at a later stage?
Yes, I mean when an application for asylum is declined, then the applicant is asked to leave, and they should leave voluntarily. That's what many applicants do. They've lost their application, they have to return. If they don't leave voluntarily, then they can be deported. But you know, this is still a long process. There are a number of Namibian nationals in the UK who are ready to leave, and we've asked them to leave, and they should be leaving. But if they don't, ultimately we will need to remove them.
You mentioned earlier, Mr. Moore, that of course this new visa regime is going to be an additional cost to Namibians who now want to travel to the UK. What are we talking about in terms of cost implications?
So our visa fees are the same worldwide, so it's always done in sterling. So a 6-month visit visa for multiple visits would be £100. But then there are options available to have a 2-year visa, a 5-year visa, a 10-year visa, obviously increasing in cost. But so, for example, if a businessman travels regularly to the UK, then it's advisable to go for something like a 5-year multi-entry visa. Then they only need to do it once. If you're going once and you don't plan to go back very often, then get a 6-month visa. So it can actually be quite an easy system for those regular travellers just to have a one-off visa application and then to go regularly for 5 or 10 years.
Mr. Moore, any final remarks you'd like to leave us with this evening?
Yeah, I mean, I know this is it has come as a bit of a shock, and it comes, as you say, it was implemented very, very quickly. This is designed actually to, you know, it's not nothing to do with how we view our relationship with Namibia. And in fact, I think it actually strengthens Namibia's reputation overseas, because it was being damaged by so many people claiming asylum, claiming they were being persecuted, which we know to be false. Actually preventing those people going to the UK and making those claims, we hope actually underlines that we believe that Namibia is a safe and stable democratic country where people have no need to run from. So I think actually what we're trying to do should help Namibia in its international reputation. And having a visa, visa requirement is nothing to do with the reputation of a country. Every country in the world has visa nationals and visa requirements. So you know, we see this actually ultimately as a helpful step, but I do recognise that many people will see it as an inconvenience and an extra cost, which adds to the problem of international travel. But you know, we hope that we get this message across, and we hope that you know, it will reduce the number of people who are claiming asylum from Namibia needlessly.
Mr. Moore, thank you so much for your time this evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That was Charles Moore, British High Commissioner.